Imagine it is 1346. An army is attacking a city, but they do not use stones or arrows. They use a crazy weapon. They throw dead bodies over the city walls. Yes, really. It sounds like a bad horror movie, but this actually happened. To understand this crazy moment, we need to go back a little bit. Let's look at Europe in the early 1300s. Europe was growing very fast. In fact, it was too crowded. There were people everywhere. But there was a big problem. Europe was super dirty. Imagine the messiest room in the world. Europe was worse. People threw their trash in the streets. Animals walked everywhere. And personal hygiene? That did not exist. People did not wash their hands. They did not take showers. Did they smell good? No, they smelled terrible. It was a perfect place for germs. But the people in Europe did not care about the smell. They cared about shopping. Europe looked at Asia and saw amazing things. Asia had soft silk and delicious spices. Europe thought, I want that. My food tastes boring. So, brave traders traveled on a very long path called the Silk Road. They walked all the way to Asia to buy these cool items. The traders were very excited. They bought the silk and the spices to sell back home. They thought, we are going to be rich. But they did not know a secret. They were bringing nice things home, but they were also bringing a very small, very dangerous passenger. So, who was this secret passenger? It was a flea. A tiny, hungry flea. And where did the flea live? It lived on a rat. This is important because rats were everywhere. For the rats, the Silk Road was fantastic. It was like a luxury vacation. They sat in the wagons, surrounded by expensive silk and tasty spices. The rats thought, this is the best life. We are traveling the world in style. The traders walked thousands of miles, but the rats just relaxed. They moved closer and closer to Europe, and they brought the sickness with them. But before the rats arrived in Europe, they stopped at a city called Kaffa. Kaffa was a very rich city on the coast. But the Mongol army wanted to take the city. The Mongols were very strong and very scary. They surrounded Kaffa and waited. They thought, we will wait until they are hungry, and then we will win. It was a good plan. But then the Mongols started to feel sick. They got big black bumps on their skin. They felt hot and terrible. The Mongol soldiers started dying. The Mongol general was furious. He thought, I cannot lose. This is embarrassing. He looked at the dead soldiers, and he had a crazy idea. A very, very bad idea. He put the dead bodies into his giant catapults. Usually, catapults threw heavy stones. But this time, The Mongols threw the dead, sick bodies over the city walls. Can you imagine that? The people inside Kaffa looked up and saw bodies falling from the sky. It was raining dead people. The people of Kaffa were horrified. They screamed, "This is disgusting!" And then they started getting sick too. The people in Kaffa panicked. They said, "We have to get out of here right now." They ran to the port and jumped onto their ships. They sailed away as fast as they could. They wanted to go to Italy. They thought, "Phew, we are safe now." But they were wrong. They forgot to check the cargo hold. The rats were on the ships too. The ships arrived in Sicily, in Italy. The people on the beach were so happy. They shouted, "Look, the ships are here. We can buy more cool stuff." They ran to the docks to greet the sailors. But when they looked inside the ships, they stopped cheering. The sailors were not moving. Most of them were dead. The people on the beach were shocked. They yelled, "Go away! Do not come here!" But it was too late. The ropes were tied to the dock. The rats ran down the ropes. The fleas jumped onto new people. The Black Death had officially arrived in Europe. The sickness moved super fast. It traveled faster than a horse. It went from Italy to France, then to Spain and England. Everyone was terrified. People asked, "What is happening? Is this the end of the world?" They needed help. So they called the doctors. But you must understand, doctors in the 1300s were interesting. They did not know about germs. They did not have medicine. They just had very strange guesses. One doctor said, "The air is bad. You need to smell something strong to clean the air." So some doctors told people to sit in the sewers. Yes, really. People sat near the toilets and smelled the poop. They thought the bad smell would fight the sickness. Did it work? No, it just smelled terrible. Other doctors wore very scary costumes. They wore long black coats and masks that looked like bird heads. The beak of the mask was filled with flowers to smell good. Imagine you are sick in bed. You wake up, and you see a giant human bird standing over you. That is the stuff of nightmares. The bird doctors tried to pop the black bumps on the patients. This was a terrible idea. It just made the blood and germs go everywhere. The doctors tried magic, they tried prayers, and they tried not taking showers. But nothing worked. The sickness was unstoppable. Europe was in total chaos. The doctors could not fix it. The bad smells could not fix it. And the bird masks? They definitely did not fix it. The sickness was everywhere. It went into the big castles, and it went into the small houses. Entire villages disappeared. One day, a village was full of happy people. A week later, it was completely empty. The silence was very scary. The church bells rang all day long for funerals. Ding dong, ding dong. Eventually, the people stopped ringing the bells. Why? Because there was no one left to ring them. The numbers were unbelievable. In just a few years, the Black Death killed millions of people. It was a complete disaster. Let's do some quick math. Think about your two best friends. Now, imagine you and your two friends are sitting at a table. Suddenly, one of you disappears. That is the scary math of the Black Death. 1 out of every 3 people in Europe died. Rich people died. Poor people died. Even kings and queens were scared. The plague did not care about money or crowns. It just wanted to spread. Europe felt very lonely and very sad. The busy markets were quiet. The farms were empty. Cows walked around the fields with no one to milk them. The rats, however, were still having a great time. They looked at the empty cities and thought, "This is our kingdom now." It was the darkest time in history. But believe it or not, there was one small surprise at the end of this horror story. Because so many people died, there was a big problem for the rich landowners. Their farms were huge, but there were no workers left to do the job. The rich lords stood in their big, empty fields and shouted, "Hello, is anyone here?" But only the wind answered. Suddenly, the poor workers realized something cool. They were rare, and being rare made them valuable. For the first time ever, the poor workers stood up to the rich bosses. A worker said, "I want more money." The lord said, "No way! How dare you?" The workers simply replied, "Okay, goodbye. I will go to the neighbor's farm." The lord panicked. He cried, "Wait, come back. I will pay you double." So the rich people finally had to open their wallets. The poor people got better wages and better food. It is very ironic. The Black Death was a terrible tragedy, but it actually helped the survivors get richer. So, in a weird way, the rats changed the economy forever. But please do not thank the rats. They are still gross.